Okay. Welcome to the Bitcoin Historical Max and Stacy with Lawrence Lepard space. We're all here. Lawrence Lepard is here, and Jethro, he is in this space as well as a co-host. He's joining us in helping us out with the Bitcoin office and Bitcoin Historico. So welcome everybody to the room. This is, there's no stopping the big, right, Lawrence Lepard?
Well, that's certainly what I wrote in the book, and I think everything is kind of playing out as imagined. A little unclear when and how big, but it's coming, and there's so many signs of it. It's just overwhelming. So, yeah. Also, I want to thank you for inviting me to this space, Max and Stacy. As you know, I'm huge fans, so good to be here.
It's good to have you here. It's kind of a historic day too. I know, when Max and I first started talking to you on Kaiser Report many, many years ago, you were a gold bug or, very interested in gold for sure. And
Mm.
silver. And we started talking to you about Bitcoin. Those were your first days in Bitcoin, but gold has hit a historic new all-time high of $4,200 today. That was pretty amazing.
And not just gold, Stacy. I mean, silver. Look at I mean, I love the way I remember you guys running that billboard in New York City, and we're trying to push the silver squeeze and all that other stuff. I mean, it's a long way we've traveled since those days, but it's we're finally being proven right here. I've got silver closing at 53.12 spot, so it's and I think going much higher. But as you know, I've transitioned from being a gold and silver bug. I mean, I still support them, but I'm much more of a Bitcoin advocate than I am a precious metals advocate these days. And I still have some legacy, a lot of legacy positions. But what I think is interesting is that, to me, I'm just incredibly excited what these precious metals moves mean for Bitcoin, in the next 12 to 18 months, because we know the pattern here. The metals smell it first, and then Bitcoin comes, faster and harder. And I think we're going to be just shocked with how well Bitcoin does in the next year.
Yeah, and the thing is, I guess, I'm not really like a market analyst, like maybe you are an investment advisor, is nobody like nobody's talking about gold, right? And, like I was kind of surprised it was over 4,000. The last I really looked, it was like 2,000. So it's not really getting much talk about it.
It's starting to get some, and you've seen some of the elites saying, the debasement trade, and it's kind of coming slowly. But yes, I mean, I just wrote my quarterly report. It'll be out in a day or two. It'll be on Twitter, and you get it on my website. And the point I would make is that in that report, a recent survey by the Bank of America showed that a survey of all investment managers' accounts throughout the country. I don't know if it was representative, but I think it was reasonably representative. 41% of those people have zero allocation to gold. Another 20 some odd percent have less than 2% allocation. So effectively, 60% of the investors in the country own zero gold. And like anyone who owned more than like a 5% allocation, it was like 6% of investors. So the people who are, have caught on to this, it's a very, very small subset of the total investment markets. And yet it's probably, as I'm sure you and Max would agree, it's the biggest story of our time, this monetary debasement. And so, we've got a long way to go to as we see everybody wake up, and they're just starting to wake up.
Yeah, well, there's no stopping the big print. So, we're going to have you join us in El Salvador on the 12th and 13th of November at Bitcoin Historico. And that's what we're here to talk about. This is not just a conference. Say, this is kind of Max and I reacting to the over corporatization of the Bitcoin conference space. So, we're going back to the OG Bitcoin conference experience. And this that we're having in Centro Historico, downtown San Salvador, is a testament to an extraordinary moment in history. And I think we're really at a crossroads, a really important moment in history. And it's going to be quite an elevated experience. And if you look at, the Bitcoin office Twitter handle, and I retweeted a lot at Stacy Herbert, you'll see that it is really an elevated an experience. It's like beautiful buildings. It's all about beauty. It's all about the good times that strong men and hard money have are creating in real time. Like we're witnessing the transformation of El Salvador. We're witnessing the transformation of entire economies and the monetary system around the world. There is an escape hatch now. That's the 12th and 13th of November of 2025, just a few weeks away. The hostess on the main stage will be Isabella Santos, and the main stage is the National Palace, where if you watched the inauguration of President Bukele on June 1st, you would have seen the National Palace during the daytime. But the main stage is really going to be active from about 3 or 4 p.m. until 8 or 9 p.m. at night. We have Lawrence Lepard, we have Ricardo Salinas, Jeff Booth, Darren Feinstein, Zuby, Giacomo Zucco, Lena Seish, Jimmy Song, Preston Pish, Max and Stacy, Knut Svanholm, Fadi Esmlahin, Efrat Fenixon, Bitstein, Wiz, John Attack, Eric Yakes, Milena Mayorga, like some really cool names. We're trying to keep it kind of small and intimate, and so like deeper conversation, no corporate sales pitches. Um, I want to bring up onto the stage our co-host in this group because he's going to be really quite helpful over the next few weeks. And I was struck by how amazing he was in the last space with me and Max. And he's like, his brain is so focused, and he's a really good media guy. Jethro, why don't you join the stage right now?
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Stacy. I've got my laser-eyed focus on fixing the money, fixing the world, just like Lawrence Lepard always talks about. It was a lot of fun doing that space and that interview with you and Max, which we'll be posting after this. And so, Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all of the work you've done on behalf of sound money education for years. The contributions you've made to this space with your credibility, your experience, your passion, your communication skills, and now this new book. It's all so helpful and so impactful. So thank you for all of that. It was also great to see you recently at the BTC and DC conference. Your panel was right up there with Max and Stacy's as one of the most popular at that event. And so part of why you're resonating with so many people is because it is this historic moment, right? So first, I'd like to ask you about the big print. What is happening with this monetary paradigm shift? What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to answer the second part first, what inspired me to write the book was listening to some political debates in the United States early last year and watching blue team fight red team and realizing they were all idiots. And I just wanted to rip my hair out because I was like, nobody's talking about the elephant in the room, which is the fact that the government spending is out of control, the debt's out of control, and they're going to have to trash the currency. And so and I thought about, well, does the world need to know this message? And I think they do. I concluded that it did. And I also concluded there have been some very excellent books written on this, books that are still better than mine, Seyfedin's book and Lynn's book and Jeff's book and others. But I thought nobody had really put it in terms that were easy for the average person to understand. And maybe that's my highest and best use, is kind of explaining complex things in a simple manner. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book that any American or world citizen really could read, and they're going to get it. They're going to get why they're being screwed, and that's depressing, the first half of the book. And then they're going to understand that given that they are being screwed, how can they can solve for that problem. And so that was what I set out to do as a goal. And I appreciate the kind words about the impact. I mean, I don't know. I've sold some books for sure. I was hoping to sell more. I'm hoping it goes viral. We got 300 million people in this country, and I don't know, selling 45,000, 50,000 books. I'm just below those numbers, just around 45 right now, just below 50. I don't know. It doesn't sound like much to me, but whatever. I did the best job I could on the book, and hopefully, people will buy it and tell their friends about it, and we'll make this movement a much bigger thing than it already is. It's a reasonably big thing, thanks to the work of the stalwarts like Stacy and Max, who carried the torch for so many years, on RTV and others. I mean, um, there've been a lot of people in this space carrying a lot of water, and I just came along and thought, well, I've got a different perspective because I've been on the investment side and a money manager, and I'll try and add my perspective to the story. So that's why I wrote the book, and I just threw it out there, and we'll see what happens, right?
Well, I really respect your humility, but that actually is a large number of book sales. Not many people buy books. And by the way, I will say the audiobook read by Walker America is also excellent. So people who enjoy listening to spaces, can get that instead. And I will say, Seyfedin was inspired to write his Principles of Economics textbook to distill the teachings of the great Austrian economists, Menger, Rothbard, Mises, to a modern audience in an academic context. I've heard you talk about how Seyfedin and Lynn Alden, they're writing to a more academic context. So I really appreciate that you have focused on taking their academic work and distilling it for the layman. And it's
Well, that's right. I mean, and I give them a ton of credit. I borrowed a lot of their thought pattern. I mean, this isn't all original thought on my part, but like I say, I mean, I do think I have a skill for explaining stuff, and that's why I did it. And look, I do. I mean, I'll tell you, the most satisfying thing I get is I get DMs and messages, and people say, "Hey, I gave it to my 70-year-old father who hated Bitcoin. He read it, he gets it, and he's buying." I'm like, yes, that's great stuff, because a lot of the boomers are the people who have all the money. So that's very satisfying. It's satisfying to hear that you can't save everybody, but we're certainly trying to save a few, and the book will probably do that. So
yeah,
that's good news.
That's a perfect example of the type of impact that you can have, a deep impact. And I also want to give both you and Max credit for being in the sound money on the front lines of sound money education for so many years. And I know Max actually wrote the foreword for the book. So maybe at this point, if you and Max could jump in about the debasement trade, maybe you first, Lawrence, and then Max, what you're seeing, like what is this moment in economic history that prompted you to write this?
Well, yeah, Max can do as good a job or me better. But the long story short, as Max has said, is that the fiat currencies is just a giant Ponzi scheme, and they have to continue to create more currency to keep the system running. And currency only gets created through the establishment of debt, and so it's really kind of like it's just an evil program. And so and we all know that this isn't anything new. I guess to bring it up to today's events, I think what's going on right now, and I think the reason why the precious metals are, as Luke Gromen would say, they're going up on every day that ends in Y, um, is that the world is waking up to what we all know, which is that the Fed is hopelessly trapped, and we're now shifting from that gradually to that suddenly phase where more and more people are becoming aware of it, and things are happening more and more quickly. And it's like, where do you begin? I'm sure I'll let Max fill in some of the blanks. I mean, one of the more recent ones today was that, we're bailing out Argentina, and, we're buying their pesos to try and support their country. And, a couple of days ago, I think they were doing it for 20 billion. Now it's up to 40. I mean, what's it going to be? 80? Besant should know better than this. I mean, he broke the Bank of England in a similar way. So, and there are a million other signs. I mean, Powell saying that he's going to go with another rate cut. Powell saying they may stop the QT quantitative tightening that they've been doing. I mean, you can just see that we're bumping up against the limits of what they can do without turning the printer back on. I mean, Powell wanted to be Volcker, and he's turning into Arthur Burns. And more importantly, I think what's really driving the metals prices today is the realization that Powell's a short termer. I mean, it's 7 months until May. He's gone. Moran, who just got on the Fed board, wanted to do 50 basis points, not 25. Moran drafted the Mar-a-Lago Accord, which basically says we got to weaken the dollar and try and settle our debt through restructuring. And Moran has also said he thinks the neutral rate should be 50 basis points, and Trump says he thinks the correct rate for the Fed fund should be 1%. And of course, they have to take it there because at the current level, they're paying $1.2 trillion a year of interest, and the deficit just came in at 1.8. So, and that's fine. They can take it there, but the natural result of that will be a wave of home refinancings, a wave of M2 growth, and the next up wave in inflation, very much like the 70s, where you had waves of inflation with each one getting worse. I mean, the first COVID wave took us from under 2% to 9 at the peak. We're now back down to 2.9. The next one's going to take us into double digits. So to me, it's so clear that what's going on right now is a sovereign debt crisis, and the world is waking up to Gresham's law, which we all know is that the money is bad, and so you got to run into hard assets. And sadly, a lot of people don't understand that Bitcoin's harder than gold, but they do understand they got to get into hard assets, and so a lot of people are moving towards gold, and the central banks are still thinking backwards. I mean, if the central banks were smart, if we were smart, what we would do right now is if we had it, which of course we don't, we would sell all our gold reserves and use it to buy Bitcoin. That's the smart thing for the U.S. federal government to do. But they're not smart, so they're not going to do that. But I'll let Max build on that.
Hey, Lawrence. Hey, everybody. Yeah, the book, The Big Print, is awesome. I got a chance to see the galleys when I was asked to write the foreword, and I read through it, and I knew right away it was an instant classic, and it deserves a place on everybody's bookshelf. And it is a good orange pilling book for those like myself who are boomers who are attached to the legacy system. But Bitcoin Historico, for me, it's a way to get back on the main path of Bitcoin and the value proposition of Bitcoin. Primarily, when you dig down into what it's all about, you come up back to self custody and hodling, because that's the unique value proposition of Bitcoin. Is it gives the individual a way to opt out of the current 300-year crisis in the banking system. And Stacy alluded earlier to the over corporatization of Bitcoin. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it means we've got paper Bitcoin, or as Stacy calls it, Bitcoin exposure versus actual Bitcoin. And you don't really experience what Bitcoin is all about. Again, to quote Stacy, all you need is one Satoshi and you have fuck you money. What does that mean? That means that you are sovereign individual. And it's the first time in history that this has been possible. Bitcoin separates money from state for the first time ever in history. It separates money from a central authority for the first time ever in history. And it does so at no cost to you. You can have property that's unconfiscatable at no cost. So Bitcoin Historico, the way I see it, what I'm looking forward to, is kind of getting back on that main primary vector, the main path to freedom, freedom from the state control, freedom from the central banks, freedom from collectivism, right? That's the path. And El Salvador is the perfect place for it to happen. And also the historic center of El Salvador, where this event takes place, that's been transformed. It's now the Citadel. It's now the shining city on the hill. So this is the place to be. So it's very, very exciting. And again, congratulations on the book. It's just, I think, 50,000 sales. Lawrence is a great number, and it's a classic.
Well, thank you, Max. You're very kind. Again, thank you for writing the forward. It really meant a lot to me that you were willing to do that.
Yeah,
Well,
it was
Max,
entertaining. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
you know,
Stacey.
Max brought up, Bitcoin Historico, and you can go check it out. Look at, the vibe of it over at bitcoinhistorico.com. And it's really important to note that the I keep on saying that the vibes of it is that Philosopher King meets Renaissance 2.0. And why I talk about Renaissance is, well, you had a great leader during that time of Medici who was willing to stand up to the Vatican, and President Bukele stood up to the biggest organizations in the world like the IMF and World Banks and the US under Biden, and in order to bring Bitcoin to his population, which is the ultimate in individual sovereignty. And the Renaissance was also an important that people often forget, because the likes of Da Vinci and Michelangelo, are so impactful in terms of how we think of that age. But it was also the age of discovery, right? And I feel like this is another age of discovery. Um, we had the Vasco da Gamas and the Christopher Columbus and Copernicus and Galileo, and we have the equivalent now in terms of human discovery. It's not like going out to the stars, other than Elon Musk, who has been talking about Bitcoin as well in the past few days. We have, the age of discovery of human potential, right? Like, this is the first time in history that we've had absolute individual sovereignty available to the individual. Like, not only do we have knowledge at the individual level, but we have your actual property totally within you yourself, that you can own it in a way that has never been possible throughout history. And I think this is an age of lightness. We're emerging from an age of darkness. And I don't think we really I don't think we really understood that we were in an age of fiat darkness until, you know, we're exiting it right now. And I think that's some of the shock that you're seeing in the global markets, why you're seeing financial, markets like gold start to move, and why you're seeing Besant bail out Argentina, and why you see these tariff wars, and why you see these rate cuts, and everything seems fine otherwise, but obviously there's something quite wrong. But Bitcoin Historico is a place where you'll find the answers and the light and people just building things.
Bless you, Lawrence. Are
Yeah,
you
sorry about
allergic
that.
to fiat?
I should have turned
Yeah.
my mic off before I sneezed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I completely agree with what you were saying, Stacy, about Bitcoin Historico. You can get your tickets at bitcoinhistorico.com. And I love the name of this conference because it is such a historic moment. So my first questions to Lawrence were about the big print and the historic context with the end of the fiat era. And one of the things that's so extraordinary about being here in El Salvador is we're seeing the rise of the new solution. This Renaissance 2.0, this economic transformation with the emerging Bitcoin economy. And before we even fully get into that, Lawrence, I know you were you came to El Salvador last year for the halving party where we both met. And what were your first impressions of El Salvador, and what sort of potential do you see here?
Well, I see enormous potential. I think I told you when I was at the halving party. I mean, I love the country. I love the people. I mean, what's not to like? I love the leader, and I think they've done an outstanding job of taking what was a real mess and turning it into, as Max calls it, a citadel. And I agree. Um, I didn't get to spend a lot of time in the capital city. I was mostly down at the halving party on the coast. But everybody I met, locals and all the folks that were there, it was fantastic. And I get it. I get why El Salvador is going to hold a very special position in the new world and the new economy. I mean, this is really the first country that has fully embraced Bitcoin. And I mean, I guess Bhutan, and there are a few other places that have been buying some, but I mean, this is more than that. And you've got leadership here that I think gets it, so to speak. So I'm very much looking forward to coming to this next event. In particular, one for some of the people I'll be able to meet. I'm hopefully can get a chance to meet the president himself, and then also to see the capital city, because I really didn't get to see much of the city. We were just at the resort where they did the having party the last time I was there. But I was extremely impressed, and I know you're up in Berlin, and as you described that, and I think I did a video conference with you guys in Berlin to your group there, and I like that area sounds really neat too. I mean, up in the hillside and the country. So look, I think you got a great thing going on down there. I haven't sold my wife on making the move, and that's going to be a little bit hard. But I have looked at property, and it's certainly the kind of place that I would think might be where one would want to be if things really went south up here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fitting that you started with the beautiful beaches. That's what El Salvador is so famous for beyond just Bitcoin adoption. But if you get a chance to spend a little bit more time here, it's a small enough country where 2 weeks is a good enough time to really get a taste of the full experience. So you can spend a little bit more time at the beach. So, like around Bitcoin Beach, Surf City area has absolutely boomed even just in the past 2 years. And just briefly going back to your book, The Big Print, a big part of my impetus for moving here was the Silicon Valley bank run. And listening to you talk about that in the book made me so angry, and it reminded me why I cared to get involved in the first place, building the Bitcoin economy here. And El Salvador is leading the way in this. So it's obviously Bitcoin is a huge part of that. The safety, the infrastructure is booming. So Surf City is a place where it's totally safe to bring your families. You can actually have a proper vacation for a couple days. It's kind of like Bitcoin Hollywood. You'll bump into prominent Bitcoiners and people building all sorts of cool projects everywhere. It's got world-class surfing. So the tourist industry around the beach is really booming. And then, yes, up in Berlin, we organized that conference. Thank you for doing the video speaking for us. And that's an interesting facet of the emerging Bitcoin economy here, the circular economies. But then you also have the strategic reserve pioneered by the Bitcoin office. You have all of the educational initiatives, Node Nation, Kubo Plus educating Bitcoin developer talent. And then you also have the securities law creating ethical rules of the road. And then you also have emerging capital markets. So when you first got into Bitcoin, and especially coming back from the days of gold, where you knew the problems, but gold was a solution that had already failed to stop fiat. So what has it been like for you as a long time sound money advocate, seeing this emergence, this experiment in a historic place at a historic time where it's actually working?
Well, it's been fantastic. I mean, I've said this in many other podcasts. I mean, it's being a gold bug was really hard for the last 30 years. And being a silver bug was really, and we got our teeth kicked in constantly by the paper markets and all the other bullshit that they managed to pull on us. And when Bitcoin came along, I was on Max and Stacy's show in the early days, and Max was very convincing, and yet I didn't get it. The error I made is I thought, well, yeah, we've tried this before, eCash and other things. They all failed, and this one won't work. This will fail too. Little did I know that Satoshi had kind of cracked the code, literally, in terms of how to do it, which is why it took me a while to get going on it. But once I realized that he had and what it was, it just became extremely clear to me that this is a new, sharper weapon that's gonna put the sword into the central banks forever. And so I think I described it in the book. A friend said to me, I'm going to join the villagers over there with the torches and the pitchforks because, they've got a solution that can't be manipulated the way gold has been manipulated. And so, and I started doing that years and years ago, and obviously I'm glad I did. So it's been fantastic, and it just every year brings new stuff, right? I mean, if you told me 3, 4 years ago that we'd have a president who was embracing it, and a treasury secretary, and a board member. I mean, Stephen Moran, this is in my quarterly report. And a few years ago, Steve Moran tweeted out, Bitcoin fixes this. I mean, we got a Bitcoiner on the Fed board. I mean, come on, that's crazy, right? Uh, there's just there's so much stuff that's happened, the ETFs, and we've even got, people that we didn't think were our friends that have bent the knee. I mean, Larry Fink, perfect example, hated it. Now he realized he could make money off of it. Now it's okay. I mean, even Jamie Dimon is softening a little bit. He said, well, I could see the case for owning gold. Well, guess what, Jamie? You're eventually going to see the case for owning Bitcoin too. So, it's really been kind of amazing to watch it unfold. And, the biggest problem I have to confront is in talking to my clients and other people. They look at it and they say, well, it's at 112. That's, yeah, you got it cheaper. That's great, but the price is too high. And everyone's making these unit bias assumptions that are wrong. And I'm like, I have to give them the sailor, no, Laura, it's going up forever because it's a fixed supply. And, the other currencies are all broken and inferior by comparison. So it's been fantastic. And I credit Bitcoin with kind of saving this old gold bug who was pretty much close to giving up when Bitcoin came along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you mentioned the pitchforks and torches and people being angry about the problems here. And I know your background, family of entrepreneurs, venture capital, early stage tech investing. What do you see as the sort of potential of this emerging solution, and how that might help orange pill more former gold people, more people on TradFi, when they see the example that El Salvador is setting, starting with the top down Bitcoin office initiatives, and then also the emerging grassroots entrepreneurial implementation of Bitcoin gains as Bitcoin proliferates into the real economy? How do you think that has much of an impact for speaking to these people who may be struggling with unit bias or other preconceived notions about Bitcoin,
Oh,
seeing it at work in the
absolutely.
world?
And it's, everybody gets there eventually at their own pace. I mean, I'm the first to admit that I didn't fully get it in the beginning, in the early days. And I remember Max being patient with me and was kind of like, well, I think you're kind of coming in the right direction, but you're kind of going slow. And he was right. But I got there eventually. And I think, it takes time. It's a new thing. Some people don't understand it. I mean, I had a chapter in the book called Skepticism that was inspired by my wife, who said, hey, you got to explain to people. She said, I think a lot of people are afraid of this thing because they just don't understand it. And you got to explain that this has happened before. I mean, I love Lynn's cartoon about, when electricity came out, an obvious enormous benefit to humankind, right? There were people drawing cartoons talking about the evils of electricity. How we're all going to be electrocuted. I mean, it's just, this is the way it goes with new things. It takes time for them to be fully adopted, right? But here we are, and we're being adopted.
Yeah, and even in the year and a half since you were last year in El Salvador, the adoption is spreading, things are accelerating, and that's why it's such a historic moment. So
Right.
I know you said this is the first time you're going to the historic district downtown. What are you excited to see about that epicenter of the transformation? people you're excited to meet,
Just
other speakers, things you're interested in seeing about the El Salvador experiment that's working to bring those lessons back home.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I want to meet a lot of the people that are attending this thing. I mean, it's a great crew, and I know many of them, but not all of them. Second of all, I really want to see that library. I've seen the photos of it. I just want to get the downtown vibe because it looks like it's a really, I mean, this country has been completely and totally transformed by this president, and it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And so I don't, what can I say? But just respect for the guy for doing that. And I'm sure Bitcoin hasn't crept into every corner of El Salvador yet, but it will. And it will creep into a lot of other countries too as we go forward here. So it's I've heard a lot about how good the downtown area is. I've heard about some good restaurants, etc. I'm a sucker for a good restaurant. I'm a sucker for a good steak. So I just look forward to the whole experience. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun.
Love it. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you here for bitcoinhistorico.com. And for everyone else who's coming for all of Bitcoin month, it really does take 2 full weeks to soak up the experience as Bitcoin proliferates out into the different parts of the country. So I'm actually in Bitcoin Beach right now, Bitcoin Berlin. We've got round 2 of that event that you spoke at for us last year. So those are the 2 main circular economy hubs, but it started proliferating throughout different parts of the country. And I'm curious, so especially since you said, people in the Federal Reserve, even the Treasury Department, these high-level decision makers in the United States are privy to your work and the work of other Bitcoiners. What lessons have you noticed? El Salvador is setting so many great examples about the right way to adopt Bitcoin and implement it into this emerging economy. As the fiat economy, the big print is coming, things start deteriorating. What solutions do you see working here? If you had to pick like 1 or 2 of all the Bitcoin office initiatives, what do you think is most important to bring back to the US first?
Well, I think the fact that they're stacking Bitcoin is probably the most important one. I mean, and I love the way Kelly is kind of given the finger to the IMF, and I think they've told him not to buy any Bitcoin. I think he's ignored them and kept buying it. So to me, if the U.S. wants to remain relevant and it wants to have any chance of leapfrogging China in this worldwide monetary debasement event, which I'm convinced is in the process of happening and will wrap up sometime by the mid 2030s, with a new sound money replacing the old monies. The U.S. has got to wake up and start buying coins. I mean, it's absurd that we're giving 20 billion or now 40 billion of pesos to Argentina, and we haven't bought any coins. I mean, it's like, what the hell, So, I mean, the killer move, I think I said it earlier, the killer move would obviously be to sell the gold and buy Bitcoin, but that's a little hard when you don't have the gold. So, or you don't have as much gold as you're reporting you say you have. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think that's the most important one, actually, is that we say that we are making a bet on this new form of sound money, which is superior to gold. And then we leave China and India in the dust, very much the way the Brits left them in the dust when the Brits went onto the gold standard and abandoned the silver standard in the earliest part of the early 20th century, late 19th century. And China and India suffered enormously by staying with silver. And then silver slowly but surely got demonetized. So to me, if the U.S. wants to remain relevant, we ought to start buying Bitcoin. Now, I know there's some Bitcoiners who don't want a strong central government, and therefore they don't want the U.S. to buy Bitcoin, and I respect that too. So it's a mixed blessing, but I prefer, with all its flaws, I do prefer the U.S. government to the Chinese government. So I'd rather see us make the right bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since El Salvador is leaving the rest of the world in the dust right now. The U.S. they better catch up soon if they want to stay the world's biggest economy. And Stacy, Max, I don't know if you guys had any other questions, and I was thinking maybe in a few minutes we open things up to Q&A. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
will say, I've named Lawrence Lepard's talk. Nothing stops the big print, but I'll tell you some of the other conversations. Darren Feinstein is coming. He's wow, he and I had a really long Zoom call talking about him coming to El Salvador for the first time. And he's a really interesting guy. He's one of the co-founders of Core Scientific, the Bitcoin miner, and recently sold to CoreWeave. They're in the process of selling at $9.2 billion. he got into Bitcoin because he was an accountant. His background is being an accountant. So again, that Renaissance theme, because of course, double entry bookkeeping was important to the first Renaissance and the Medici's and all those, the gold banking families that became so wealthy in the Italian city states. But his speech is going to be called Truth, Beauty, Bitcoin. And Ricardo Salinas is speaking on the topic of the Bitcoin Enlightenment, and Giacomo Zucco, who is so important to El Salvador and what we've built there in terms of education. He's been so amazing on Cubo Plus. He's a remarkable educator and just such a high integrity guy. Everything we do at the Bitcoin office is under the motto of excellence only. And Giacomo Zucco is definitely lives by that standard, whether or not, he articulates it as the Bitcoin office does. But his talk is called Strong Men, Good Times, because of course in El Salvador, strong men have created good times, and strong men and hard money in particular, good times. And Jimmy Song, who was the first of the educators to come to El Salvador in early 2022, and he taught my Jimmy Song 7, and he's going to talk about noblesse oblige, just so you know. Yeah, but we should open it up to the audience for Q&A. Remember, bitcoinhistorico.com, the Genesis Crown Pass gets you a seat in the National Palace. If you go to the Bitcoin office, Twitter handle Bitcoin office SV, you'll see a video in which we show you inside the National Palace. It's really, really, really quite stunning. We have in El Salvador a 1 in 500 year type leader. And I believe this is a once in 500 year type moment in history, just like we had the Enlightenment or the Renaissance or ancient Greece or, uh, golden ages. Larry, can you mute your mic? Yeah, the golden age of, classical Rome. I think, this moment is the Bitcoin moment. This will be the epoch that is remembered in 500 years of the people who build right now in a sort of honest individual sovereignty, economic liberty manner, right? This is an age of light. So I think if this is a place to be. Bitcoin Historico, downtown Central San Salvador is the place to be at this moment, and you have to experience it. It's not just a conference. It really isn't a conference. It's more of an experience. During the day from like 9 a.m. until 2 p.m., we're going to have very fun, family-oriented face painting, mural making, all participatory. We're going to have some educational, participatory events, including LARPs, live action role plays. Maybe people on this call, they're already Bitcoiners and they don't need that, but there is, for the population at large and newbies, those are all free. We'll have a professional graffiti artist who are going to be making a giant mural of some famous Bitcoin names. So you'll be able to have just a good time. There's pupusas. There's the Bitcoin farmers market. It's going to come up into the central square. We have the people from the Bitcoin hardware store will be there, show you how to self custody. So there's going to be a lot of events like that. Then at the National Theater from about 11 a.m. until 4 p.m., we're going to have the tech devs and education stage. So you're going to have more of for people who aren't necessarily newbies, and a little bit more technical discussion and conversation happening. And we have many, many, many speakers on there. Right now on the website, we just really have the main stage speakers listed, but we'll be putting up all the other speakers from the National Theater stage. And the main stage will be from about 4 p.m. until 9 p.m., on the National Palace, and it will be broadcast to the public square and around downtown Centro Historico. We'll have a live translation into Spanish for the Salvadoran population who can watch on the LED screens that we're going to put throughout downtown San Salvador for free for them to watch. So yeah, that's the event, and I think it's very elegant and elevated an experience, and I hope you come and join us. But what sort of questions do you have? I hope Jethro is reading through the questions or uh, responding to some of the
Yes.
requests to speak.
Yeah, so I'm about to start bringing people up. And before I do that, I will just say, out of respect for everybody's time, if you could prepare your question as much as possible ahead of time, try to keep it around 30 seconds, under a minute, high signal. We've got some great panelists here, so let's respect their time. And in that spirit, I know Charlie, the natural investor, he already prepared a question. And Charlie has been involved in some of those initiatives that have been mentioned. So, like, he helped get Bitcoin farmers market up and running. He was critical in the success of the grassroots adoption in Berlin. And I know he prepared a question. So, Charlie, I just gave you the invitation. And when you're connected, you can ask your question to Lawrence Lepard.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be on. Thanks, Stacy and Max, for putting this on and attracting such an amazing crew of people to come to El Salvador. I've been here for the last 2 years and working intensely with Bitcoin Berlin and now with Bitcoin Coast. And I'll be running Economia Bitcoin with Jethro in November 22nd. But really looking forward to Centro Histórico. The question is, Lawrence, I really enjoyed the big print and really appreciated your appearance last year at Economia Bitcoin. But I can see that you really valued the old America, the one that was built on sense, the one that was built on traditional values and honesty. And we can see that that's being distorted due to fiat over time. And as we know, Bitcoin being truth and honesty, the fact that we cannot fake anything within the Bitcoin network. Do you believe as Bitcoin becomes a monetary base of the world and we start to use it as a medium of exchange, as a way to store value and a way to account, that we will be able to decipher between what is true and what is false, or what is good and what is bad? And since, the US and El Salvador have a shared connection based on something that's deep, which is Christianity, do you think that as we turn towards a Bitcoin as our base, that we will be able to see more truth and turn towards more traditional values that are Christian based? I would really appreciate to see what your opinion is of this. Are we going to reach that singularity? Are we going to be able to distinguish between what is good and what is bad in a better way?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think when you corrupt the money, you corrupt everything, and the wrong people win, and the wrong stuff gets rewarded. And when we go back to sound money, people get rewarded for honest work, and honest people rise to the top, not the criminals that have risen to the top in our society. So yes, I mean, there's a chapter in the book called, the moral sound money is a moral issue, and I really believe that to be true. And we don't know yet. We can't. This is a theory that we have, but I believe the country, and the country's always had flaws, but I believe the country was more moral when it was on a sound money than it is today. There's been a lot of grifting and fraud, and a lot of the wrong people have been winning as a result of that grifting and fraud and the government abuse of power. And frankly, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, have died as a result of stupid wars. I mean, I think of the poor rice farmers in North Vietnam that Nixon decided to carpet bomb. I mean, it's just and fiat money paid for that war. So I think there's no doubt that and frankly, that's part of why I'm just so bullish on Bitcoin. I care so much about it, not just as a way to protect your savings, which it is, but also as a way to just make the world a better place. That's I think I swiped it from Marty Bent. I think he swiped it from the show Heroes, but that's why I say fix the money, fix the world. It used to be save the cheerleader, save the world, and we gotta fix the money. And I think that what flows from that will be fantastic. And yeah, it'll lead to reestablishment of religions, if that's what it is, or spirituality. I mean, I think just at a lot of different levels, I think the world is going to be a much better place when we return to sound money. And I think, as much as the first part of the book is depressing, and I've been accused of being a doomer for writing the first part of the book, I think it's just analysis, not doom. I think the second part of the book is extremely hopeful, and I think what my kids and grandkids are going to live in after we get through this fourth turning is going to be so much better than any of us could ever imagine, and we'll look back at it and say, I can't believe we put up with that bullshit for as long as we did. So that's kind of how I see it.
I want to jump in and say that Paul Tudor Jones, who is I know it gets dropped around a lot for hedge fund managers, but he is a legendary hedge fund manager. Paul Tudor Jones in 2020, when he first announced publicly that he was, long Bitcoin, he said, Bitcoin is a bet on the future of humanity. And
Wow.
I think that is the right way to look at it. And I think El Salvador is proof of that. And that's why you should come and see for yourself. Don't trust, verify. Come to Bitcoin Historico, go to Adopting Bitcoin, go to Economia and Berlin. And also come to our meetups. Max and I are having a meetup before and after Bitcoin Historico. So on Sunday, 9th of November, we're having a meetup at our restaurant La Cajita in Bitcoin Beach. It's free. You just have to register on the Eventbrite just because space is limited. And then after Bitcoin Historico on the 15th and after Adopting Bitcoin ends on the 15th as well, that evening we'll have another meetup at La Cajita in Bitcoin Beach. So there are so many things to do over the course of 2 weeks. You're just going to fall in love with El Salvador. I really promise at least 75% of you that come will never leave. You'll want to stay.
Very well said, Stacy, and especially wholeheartedly agreed with what you said, Lawrence, about how just the optimism that's emerging here as the contrast to the problems with the fiat world. That's kind of why I wanted to start with the big print. A few questions on that really set the stage. But then here in El Salvador, we are seeing this Renaissance 2.0, and it's real. Like, we're seeing the solution emerge, and I really believe it is the most optimistic, inspiring place on earth. And it really takes 2 full weeks to soak it all in. So wholeheartedly agree with Stacy on all of those shout outs for all of those side events. Thank you, Charlie, for the question and for all the work you've done for grassroots adoption, including Economy of Bitcoin in Berlin. And again, thank you, Lawrence, for speaking at that last year. I would like to move to the next question now. So Puncher75, you're up.
Hi guys. First, just thanks for everybody. This event seems to be growing in size and scale, and it's a testament to, I'm sure, what's a lot of hard work behind the scenes. So thank you so much. Larry, I heard you say you're looking at real estate down there. Jeff Booth and I are gonna go down and take a look at some things. Not anything I'm involved in, although I am doing some construction down the beach. But Bitcoiners, Mike Smith, Steve Cross, they've acquired quite a bit of land and have some big plans down there. So if it's something anybody, Larry, you or anybody else, maybe we can escape down there and take a look around and show you around to what's there now and what's coming, because I really think that down the beach throughout El Salvador, but native El Salvadorans and the diaspora that's coming back and people from all over the world, expats coming down there. I just think it's going to be a really unique community in the years to come and something special. So anybody who wants to be part of that, we'll try to sneak away. I know it's a jam-packed event, so it's going to be difficult to do it. But good thing about El Salvador, everything is 45 minutes away from end to end. So that's great. And anybody who wants to shoot me a DM, we'll go and take a look and, be back we won't miss a thing. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Puncher, and I totally respect what you've built as a Bitcoiner, seizing on this opportunity and contributing to Renaissance 2.0, establishing a small business downtown in the historic district. It's really setting the example of what's possible here with economic liberty and with security from support of the administration, the Bukele administration. It is possible to just come here and build, and you've stepped up, Puncher75, so love that. Look forward to seeing you in the historic district around bitcoinhistorico.com. Everybody listening, get your tickets if you haven't already. It's going to be amazing. And as Stacy said, next up, the Bitcoin hardware store is also participating in Historico. So I assume that's Ronnie there. You're up next, buddy. So you've done amazing work with the hardware store. So could you tell us about it and ask your question for Lawrence?
You, Jethro. Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Max. Thanks, everyone here for this incredible space. I love being able to tune into these and just listen to other people talk about Bitcoin. I invite everybody to come down to the Bitcoin hardware store where we educate people on the importance of self-custody. And none of this would be possible without the work of the Bitcoin office, Stacy, Bitcoin Beach. There's a lot of people involved, and I'm just thankful to be a part of this here. Lawrence, I had a quick question for you. Seeing as here at the Bitcoin hardware store, we get a lot of visitors from the US, Canada, Europe, these places where your book really is kind of warning people of what's to come. And I do believe, and obviously we're living it, where Bitcoin is an amazing store of value, the best store of value. But one of the things that I find really difficult sometimes to get across to people is the fact that Bitcoin is also a medium of exchange. And I get a lot of rebuttal in the terms of, well, I don't want to use it yet because, it's going to be worth more tomorrow. There's that store of value part of it. My question to you, Lawrence, is would love to get your opinion as to how to combat that rebuttal. Because for me, obviously, I live on a Bitcoin standard here in El Salvador. It's the best form of money possible, and I love spending it, and I love spending my Bitcoin at places that accept Bitcoin. But for people that only see it as a store of value, how do you see that? How do you combat that rebuttal from someone who
Well,
only sees it as a store of value and is scared to use it?
first of all, it's not bad if they only see it as a store of value, because that is its first and best use case. But I'm with Jeff Booth in that I believe that we all have to actually use it as money if we want it to become money. And so it's important to create a circular economy. I just paid an electrician on Cape Cod with my Strike account because he's a Bitcoiner and he has a Strike account. And of course, it cost us nothing. They just did a swap within their organization. Spend and replace is really the right answer. I mean, I think if you believe that it's important as the new form of money, and I do, I think my grandkids will denominate things in sats. Then what you've got to believe is that we have to use it. And so, even if it's a little inconvenient at first, we've got to help, the world get through these teething pains. And so, whenever I can, if somebody accepts Bitcoin, I pay in Bitcoin. Now, obviously, I don't like losing any Bitcoin, but then what I just do is take whatever fiat is necessary and replace what I just spent. So, that's kind of what I tell people. But to be frank, I mean, if somebody doesn't want to spend it, fine. I mean, as long as they keep buying it and holding it, they're getting. I mean, the first and highest and best use, as we all know, is as a savings technology and store of value. But I'm with Jeff. I mean, I think spending it and using it and making it money, and not just digital gold. That's an important part of the entire process. Because I mean, just as an example, I think it's very important that we pass this law that says that de minimis things won't be taxed. I mean, I'm already a tax cheat, right? I've got Bitcoin that I bought much cheaper that I use to buy things, and I'm not recording the taxes on the sale. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, how they ever going to keep track of it? How they ever going to enforce it, right? So that law has to get put through, and it probably will. But yeah, I mean, using it's an important piece of adoption, in my view. And
I think the
yeah,
merchants are really, really important to it. So at La Cajita in Bitcoin Beach, we offer a huge steep discount if anybody is willing to pay us with Bitcoin instead of the shitty money, which is dollars. So we prefer to receive Bitcoin because, of course, we want to build our own Bitcoin treasury. So we're incentivizing them to pay with Bitcoin. The same thing happened with the Renaissance. Florence became so powerful because of the florin, and the florin wasn't like they said, "Oh, come on, everybody, spend your florin." We have the best unit of account, like the best measurement and trusted measurement of a gold coin. It was like the merchants from Florence traveling to North Africa, and they arrive in North Africa to the bazaar or to the Medina, and the merchants there would say, "Hey, I recognize that florin, and I know I'm not going to have to measure it like all the other ones, and half the time it's all like clipped and fake. I know that one's good, so I'm going to give you my best product, and maybe even give you a discount just for giving me that florin." And so that's how it became a cycle, right? The Florentine merchants received the best goods from the wherever they traveled to around the world, and they became a center of excellence because of that, and they became wealthier and wealthier because they were trading their florin for these goods. And the same thing will happen with Bitcoin. Like, you have the best money, and so you can get the best goods and use those best goods and materials to build something amazing. And the same thing with the shops. Like, you should want to receive Bitcoin rather than dollars. So offer a discount, offer something to entice these people to part with their Bitcoin rather than with their dollars. Like,
Yeah.
I never understand it why people are like, here, this is $100 US dollars or $100 worth of Bitcoin. It's like, well, of course, Gresham's law says they're going to give you the $100 worth of US dollars. That makes perfect sense. That's the right thing to do if you have $100 in US dollar cash or $100 worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Plus, in a circular economy, you're spending Bitcoin, but you're also receiving Bitcoin. So it's a wash. You're getting paid in Bitcoin. That's what a circular Bitcoin means. You're not losing any Bitcoin. It's all in Bitcoin. You're being paid in Bitcoin. You're saving in Bitcoin. You're using it as a medium of exchange. It's a circular economy. And then every month you put some into your long-term store of value. So, accept Bitcoin and get paid in Bitcoin.
Yeah, very well said, all four of you. I wholeheartedly agree that the medium of exchange adoption is a critical part of Bitcoin, hyper Bitcoinization, in addition to the store of value aspect. And I know, out of respect for everybody's time, we can't go on with this forever. So I will say just two more questions. Bitcoin for the next gen and Gregory. But first, I just want to give some quick shout outs. So Bitcoin Beach set the example with circular economy, medium of exchange adoption. Copied that after President Bukele made the legal tender law. So to your point, Lawrence, and we heard about this at the BTC and DC conference, several US elected officials talking about removing this de minimis exemption so that the biggest economy in the world can start copying El Salvador's example of what works and start having a sensible approach to integrating sound money to uplift the entire economy. And I will just say very quickly, so Bitcoin Beach, Bitcoin Berlin are the two leading circular economies here. Bitcoin Hardware Store is a store in Bitcoin Beach where you can buy all the technology you and for travel. Bitcoin Travel, a Salvadorian tech company, they're one of the listeners here. You can book your flights to bitcoin.com with paying with Bitcoin, thanks to Bitcoin Travel. You can stay with AirBTC. Why use Airbnb when you can use a company built by Bitcoiners? BitDriver. So when you arrive, you can book your rides with another Salvadorian startup. So it's a taxi cab service, car rentals, all of it you can pay with Bitcoin. You can replace it later, full experience of the sound money solutions that are emerging here as part of Renaissance 2.0. All of those are great options. And so we'll now pass it off to, it looks like for the next gen dropped out. So I guess Gregory, you're up next.
Hey, hi everyone. Larry, hey, I need to apologize to you because I was in New York City and we were doing the Kotzman on conference thing, and like I had a question in the sailor, and I said that you need to be his vice president if he runs in 28. So I didn't even consult with you. So sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't think it's likely to happen, but I do think he's going to run for president. I have it at 2032.
Okay. It is sort of the best and the worst of times. I see Puncher in here too. He had a space earlier today, and he was sort of, kind of thinking about the deflationary aspects of AI and deflationary aspects of Bitcoin, and kind of wondering what everyone is going to do. But then I heard Stacy, I love this idea of Renaissance 2.0 as sort of this uplift, right? Because the Booth thesis is deflationary, right? So it's gonna, we think choppy, but having that inspiring beacon to shoot for. So I've heard Stacy say excellence and Renaissance, so the possibility that we are in Renaissance 2.0. In some ways it does feel like it. As I was listening to you, like your boomer buddies were on with BTC sessions, George and Bob Burton, just in real time. So here we are having all these, conversations, thinking about the world we want shaping up, and it feels like we're putting it into place. And El Salvador to hear Puncher and Booth talking about doing stuff in El Salvador, just incredibly exciting. I guess the question I have is, I don't know if Dave Collum, I saw he was in here before earlier. How come those guys can't connect? What's going on with John Hussman and David Stockman and Dave Collum? I guess that's a question. Don't answer that if you don't want to. Answer something else. But anyway, I just happy that you jumped on here, Larry. Always love hearing what's on your mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people just don't get it. That's all I can say. It takes a certain amount of humility and logical thinking to understand it, and some people lack those things. So, but I don't give up on them. They'll, I think eventually, as Max said, I mean, everyone's going to bend the knee eventually. It's coming. So you just, just keep working on them. Is the way I view it.
Yeah, El Salvador is a unique economy in that because it is coming out of the fourth turning, that is full of confidence. And to create a credit cycle, you need confidence. Bitcoin is the base layer for economic expansion. There will be inflation. There will be a credit cycle based on confidence in the country that is leading the world with a Bitcoinization. Countries that are still mired in fiat, they're contracting, they're deflating, their fiat money is going down. And so the credit cycle is contracting. So there's depression. So that's the difference. I mean, it's not that you don't have the same dynamics on top of a Bitcoin economy that you would have on a fiat money economy. But what you have with the Bitcoin economy in El Salvador that's lacking everywhere else in the world is confidence. People in El Salvador are confident about the future. And that's why it's going to be leading the world.
Also, on top of the deflation of Bitcoin, I think we're in a period of exponential innovation, and that's quite exhilarating. I think AI has opened up this world of just genuinely exponential innovation. I wrote our AI law in El Salvador and run the AI policy there, and it's kind of breathtaking and exhilarating how rapid things are progressing and how these tools are in the hands of the individual in at just the right moment in history. And perhaps these things, stars are aligned to create moments like the Renaissance or moments like the Enlightenment or moments like now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a historic moment in time, both in fiat world with the big print. So everybody listening, I encourage you to buy that book, or at least the audiobook read by Walker America. It'll make you mad, but it'll also inspire you, especially in the second half. And if you want to see the solutions in action, there's nowhere in the world like El Salvador at this historic moment. So come on down for bitcoinhistorico.com and buy your tickets with Bitcoin. And then stay, if you can, for anybody who hears this, try to stay for 2 full weeks, soak up the full experience in this historic moment of the Renaissance 2.0 transformation. We've got November 12th and 13th, Bitcoin Historico, November 14th and 15th, Adopting Bitcoin, the 5th annual year running for it's kind of like the heartbeat of Bitcoin conferences here. And then come on down to Bitcoin Beach, experience Surf City, the transformation, how it's becoming genuinely a paradise down here. And then come on up, especially if you are serious Bitcoiner, you want to see medium of exchange in action, come on up to the mountains, cool off in coffee country, come to Berlin for Economy of Bitcoin, just November 22nd and 23rd. So it's going to be a whirlwind. And I know this has been going over an hour now. So out of respect for everybody's time, I think that's probably it for the questions. But I know, so Stacy, you've got some more spaces planned. Is there any next steps that you would like to talk about?
Yes, we have a space coming up on Friday with Jimmy Song, and then we'll have a few more spaces up in the next few weeks, and Jethro will handle these for us because he's so good at this. Everybody give him a round of applause, of course. He's amazing at managing this and just so articulate at explaining, not only what each of these speakers are offering to the Bitcoin space, but what El Salvador really means at this moment in history. I think he sees it firsthand. What he's building up in Berlin is amazing, and I hope some of you go up there and experience it for yourself because it's not only beautiful, it has amazing coffee, but they're building stuff. And Jethro and everybody up there show really another one of the mottos of El Salvador is you can just do things. We prove it over and over every single day. Everywhere you look in El Salvador, you can just do things.
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words, Stacy. And it's an easy job here because it's just so inspiring what's happening here. It's the most extraordinary place at the most extraordinary moment in history with the most extraordinary people. It's a totally safe environment for builders. The government has respect for economic liberty, the intersection of sound money, Bitcoin, and entrepreneurship. So you can just come here and do things, and you can see for yourself this November, Bitcoin month. So any final thoughts from you, Lawrence?
No, thank you all for listening. And, Max and Stacey, I look forward to seeing you relatively soon now. This weekend I'll be at Bitcoin Montreal. If anybody is up in Canada and wants to swing by, I have some books to sign. So, but love this community, and I really appreciate everyone who's purchased the book and supported the book. And I hope it's the tool that we need to convince the rest of the world that we're right, because we are, and we need to save as many people as we can.
I wholeheartedly agree. And so, Max or Stacy, if you have final thoughts, you can jump in now. Otherwise, it was great talking to all of you, and we'll see you for that space with Jimmy Song. Be sure you're following Stacy. She'll be posting the announcement there.
Okay.
And yeah, we look forward to seeing all of you then.
BitcoinHistorico.com. This isn't just a conference. This is a testament to an extraordinary moment in history. And there are no bad tickets, by the way, on the website. And in fact, you could just go for free, right? And there's like lots of areas and lots of events that will be totally free and open to all, because we want you all there. We want you to visit the country and see and verify for yourself that this is a renaissance happening in El Salvador. But if you want to get inside the National Palace, I think you won't regret it, because it's going to be, we'll make history there.
Yeah, everybody, see you soon. Looking forward to it. It's just the physical beauty of it all is inspiring in itself. Looking forward to seeing you all soon.
Okay, bye everybody. See you on Friday.